The 2000s gave us some unforgettable moments in cinema, but not all for the right reasons. For every box office hit, there was a flop so spectacular it left studios in ruins, directors in hiding, and budgets going up in smoke. We're talking about films that didn't just bomb, they created so hard they took entire careers and companies with them. From CGI game changers that changed nothing to action epics nobody asked for, here are some of the most jaw-dropping box office disasters of the 2000s. Imagine a movie so bad it gets a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes and still has that score 20 years later. That's Ballistic, Ecks versus Sever. The plot? Two secret agents who hate each other team up to stop a cartoon villain with a doomsday weapon. Sounds basic enough, but this wasn't really about making a good film. The studio, Franchise Pictures, was infamous for inflating production budgets to scam investors. The $70 million budget was part of a financial scheme, and the end result was pure cinematic disaster. The director didn't work again for a decade, and one writer swore off film entirely. Casino Heist, Elvis impersonators, Kurt Russell, Kevin Costner. On paper, it's gold. In reality, it's one of the messiest productions of the decade. Franchise Pictures, yes, them again lied about the budget, claiming $60 million instead of $47 million so they could pocket the difference. Lawsuits followed, the studio collapsed, and the final movie was an over-edited mess. Even two competing cuts of the film couldn't save it at the box office. Brendan Fraser as a cartoonist trapped in a nightmare world full of his own creations. Directed by Henry Selick, this should have been a dark, creative fantasy. Instead, after Fox changed leadership mid-production, the movie was chopped to pieces, marketed to no one, and released quietly into 1,700 theaters. Too weird for kids, too dumb for adults, a box office flop that made Selick vow never to touch live action again. A rom-com with Warren Beatty, Diane Keaton, Goldie Hawn, and a $90 million budget that started as $14 million. With no finished script, production spiraled out of control, release dates were missed a dozen times, and reshoots dragged on for years. When it finally hit cinemas, even the cast avoided promoting it. The result? One of the most expensive flops in box office history. Square Pictures spent $137 million creating the first photorealistic CGI movie, hoping to launch a digital actress into stardom. The visuals were stunning for the time, but the story fell flat. The box office return? Just $85 million? The loss was so big, it killed Square Pictures entirely. It's remembered today as the perfect example of how groundbreaking tech can't save a weak screenplay. Even hardcore Final Fantasy fans struggled to connect with it. Sylvester Stallone's horror thriller was so badly received in test screenings that Universal shelved it for 3 years. When it finally came out in just 78 theaters, it made a tragic $79,000 opening weekend. Even the producers pulled their names from the credits. Stallone himself later admitted it was one of the lowest points of his career. The movie barely even made a blip in home video sales. Disney spent $107 million on a historically accurate retelling of the famous battle. But April was a terrible release window, the reviews were mixed, and audiences weren't interested. The box office barely crossed $25 million, leading to an estimated $80 million loss. It's now mostly remembered as an over-budget history lesson that no one asked for. For Disney, it was a painful reminder that prestige doesn't always equal profit. Think Top Gun meets Short Circuit, but worse. A lightning strike makes a fighter jet sentient, and now it's trying to start World War III. Sony spent big on marketing, but the movie was buried under better summer releases. The flop was so bad, the director's next big project was cancelled. Today, it lives on as a cautionary tale about how expensive CGI can't disguise a silly script. Even Jamie Foxx, fresh off an Oscar win, couldn't save it. Based on a Ray Bradbury story, this sci-fi adventure had an $80 million budget, but sat on a shelf for 3 years. When it finally released, the CGI dinosaurs looked like PlayStation 2 cutscenes. Critics tore it apart, and Warner Bros. Barely admitted it existed. The delay and poor effects became infamous among movie buffs. It's now a cult so bad it's good watch for bad cinema lovers. Tim Allen leads a team of kid superheroes in what's basically X-Men for toddlers. Reviews? A solid 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Even a cast with Courtney Cox and Chevy Chase couldn't save it from box office doom. The budget vanished into generic effects and bland humor. To this day, it's held up as one of the laziest superhero films ever made. A $58 million poker drama starring Eric Bana and Drew Barrymore that audiences hated from the start. Warner Bros. Tried endless re-edits, but nothing worked. They eventually dumped it into cinemas the same weekend as Spider-Man 3. It lost up to $50 million. The film's slow pacing and lifeless romance subplots sealed its fate. Even poker fans couldn't bluff their way into liking it. Jason Statham, Ray Liotta, and Burt Reynolds in a Lord of the Rings knockoff from Uwe Boll, the king of tax loophole filmmaking. With a $60 million budget, this was Boll's biggest gamble. It bombed so hard that when the loophole closed, his career in big-budget cinema went with it. Critics ripped it apart for its wooden acting and dollar store fantasy costumes. Fans of the game it was based on barely recognized the story. Universal gave $100 million for a dinosaur comedy based on a 1970s TV show almost no one remembered. It opened behind The Hangover and Up, got a C+ cinema score, and was written off as an $40 million loss. Even the studio president called it crap. The mix of crude humor and kid-friendly visuals confused audiences. It quickly vanished from theaters within weeks. The 1994 Street Fighter film was bad, but somehow this was worse. With a $50 million budget, poor marketing, and zero hype, it stumbled into theaters and vanished instantly. Director Andrzej Bartkowiak wouldn't make another studio movie for almost a decade. The fight scenes were clumsy, and the plot felt nothing like the video game. Even die-hard Street Fighter fans stayed away. And there you have it, the wildest, weirdest, and most wallet-destroying box office flops of the 2000s. Some of these films burned through budgets like popcorn at a midnight screening, others were doomed before the first scene was even shot. But they all remind us of one thing: in cinema, a big budget doesn't always mean a big hit. Which one of these flops do you think deserves a second chance? And which should stay buried in the DVD bargain bin forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this little trip through cinematic disaster, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Until then, keep your popcorn ready, because in Hollywood, the next big flop might be just around the corner.